Can y'all hear me? Yeah. Good. Let's start with a quote. It's the one you see here. His isn't a cultural method. Buford does not go to the Louvre to see how Rembrandt examined a face in order to transfer it onto his canvas, nor does he involve himself in the general development of artistic technique. As you might have guessed, this is from an art review. It was written by a French art critic named Jacques Michel, and it appeared in the newspaper Le Monde in 1973. The Buford in question is, of course, our Buford, Buford Delaney, born here in Knoxville in 1901. Died in Paris in 1979. In terms of basic biography, you can think of Buford's life and career in 4 basic stages: Knoxville, Boston, New York, and then Paris. Delaney moved to France in 1953, and with the exception of a short trip home to Knoxville to see his family, he never came back to the US. Back to that quote now. Michel is clearly invested in an idea of Buford as an artist who floated above the history of art, an artist who was neither inspiring to nor inspired by the work of other artists. And that just isn't true. That's what I'm here to show you, admittedly, really briefly. I'm here to give you a very quick sense of Delaney's really deep engagement with the history of art by focusing on this portrait, a painting of a very young James Baldwin. The work itself is sort of early to mid-career for Buford. He painted it about 3 decades before Jacques Michel started spouting off at the boosh about how he lacked a cultural method. But even then, even early in his career, he was already seizing on these really iconic works of art and playing with them in very rich and provocative ways. Little bit of backstory, Delaney met Baldwin in 1940. So when he was 38 years old and Baldwin was 16. Baldwin later referred to Buford as his spiritual father. They were that close for the rest of Buford's life. They were family, not biological or legal family, but spiritual family nonetheless. They were not lovers. I want to deal with that assumption right now. Delaney was attracted to Baldwin, but Baldwin didn't feel it back, and Delaney didn't push it. Instead, what he did was to paint Baldwin, again and again, beginning with this 1941 painting, which he entitled Dark Rapture. Now, the title itself shouts out to a bunch of things, including this exoticizing fantasy via film of what supposedly goes on in darkest Africa. The title also refers to a 1938 song recorded by the Count Basie Orchestra, and Delaney spent a good chunk of 1941 sketching Count Basie as he performed in New York. So it was entirely possible that Dark Rapture, and that's the important part here, the title Dark Rapture, that Delaney had Dark Rapture spinning in his mind as he painted it. The song itself is also really exoticizing, all of these lyrics about the thrill of jungle wonder. So Delaney, right off the bat, he's dealing with these stereotypes of blackness. But if you know his artistic influences, you see how he's playing with them. First artistic influence, Vincent van Gogh. You can see Delaney's debt to Van Gogh, both in these really kind of thick impasto paint surfaces and in Delaney's use of color. Like Van Gogh, Delaney was really interested in color's ability to express emotion. Delaney is also indebted to the French modernist master Henri Matisse. And again, you see the artistic debt in Delaney's use of color. These really kind of wild, discordant color combinations that he's using to build Baldwin's body and his surroundings. Specifically, Delaney was looking at Matisse's Fauvist work. And by Fauvism, Fauviste, I mean the sort of work that Matisse was making right around 1907, work that again invokes these really discordant, almost jarring color combinations. Now the word itself, fauve, is a French word, quelle surprise. It means wild beast. So when Matisse's critics originally called him a fauve, they meant it as an insult. They meant that his use of color was so unrefined, so barbaric, that he was essentially painting like a wild animal. So with Dark Rapture here, you see Delaney painting like a beast, right? Inspired as well by Matisse's Fauvist masterwork, Le Bonheur de Vivre, or The Joy of Life. And you can see that both works use that Fauvist palette. Both are also framed by these sinuous trees. Both feature nude, lounging figures. They're also both what we refer to as pastoral scenes. And art historically speaking, a pastoral is sort of like glamping. It's this fantasy of life and nature, right? Where you never die of exposure, you never get eaten by a wolf, you don't even grass stains on your pants, assuming you're still wearing them. This is the mother of all pastoral works. This is the Renaissance master Titian's 1510-ish work, Concert Champêtre, where we see two aristocratic men bonding over music as these female muse figures sort of flit around in the background. The point here is that in the name alone and in the use of color and subject matter, Delaney is immediately tapping into these art historical traditions, right? Traditions that show men coming together, installing Baldwin in this pastoral landscape, calling him a muse, and beyond that, taking the flutes and lutes that appear in Matisse and Titian and essentially swapping them out for the entire horn section of the Count Basie Orchestra. That is a cultural method. That, in my opinion, is Buford's sound. Thank you.